Welcome to another edition of Political Brew. I'm your host, Donovan Lynch. I'm joined by two esteemed political minds, Republican Lisa Keim, Democrat BJ McCallister. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Too much to discuss, I would argue. I say that every week, but it's true every week. Before we get into all the stuff that's been going on in Maine, I want to start at the national level on the issue of trade. Now, after delaying putting a 25% tariff on goods from Mexico and Canada, President Donald Trump said the duties would go into effect on March 4th, quote, as scheduled. He claimed the two countries were not doing enough to stop drugs from coming into the United States, the basis of the deal that averted the tariff in early February. Lisa, I want to start with you. Let's take the economics out of it for a second. These tariffs, or threats of tariffs, have put some strain on the U.S. relationship with Canada. We saw booing at the U.S.-Canada hockey game during the national anthem. What are the consequences of maybe a more soured relationship between us and our northern neighbors?
Mm-hmm. Well, these tariffs, I think we're all hoping, are more of a measure for negotiation rather than an end goal. And with Mexico, for sure, we've seen a lot of movement that's been positive. They just extradited some of the prisoners, right, some of the drug cartel to come here to the U.S., right, to be prosecuted. With Canada, things are more murky. We've had these types of disagreements on tariffs, especially here in Maine, where we well remember all of the tariffs on, softwood that really strain relations between Maine, who has, more trading, I would dare say, and more economic impact from this tariff war with Canada than maybe any other state, given our reliance on their oil and also their wood. So this is a difficult needle to thread. I think I do believe Trump is trying to play a game here of positioning America to be strong, but it remains to be seen whether or not this works out in Americans' favor.
BJ, I mean, what's the argument against the idea that, hey, this could be a tool to get the U.S. some concessions from our neighbors?
Well, I think the argument is pure economics. Look, people voted for President Trump with an economic mandate. We heard that time and time again, leading up to the election and after the election. And, Lisa's exactly right. These tariffs are going to negatively impact Mainers disproportionately. I mean, we've heard from people who own lumber businesses in Aroostook County who have expressed deep concern about what these tariffs might mean for their business. But also it's everyday consumer products too. I mean, whether that be aluminum that might be in your soda can that might go up and drive up the cost of soda, or if it's things as, big as things like steel and building products that are needed to address things like our housing crisis.
And Lisa, I want to go to you for a second, because tariffs seem to me as part of an economic populism agenda. It's all about bringing manufacturing back to the United States. How do you think the Republican base, which maybe used to be free trade under President Reagan, for example, how do you think the Republican base feels about this push towards protectionism?
I would say divided, because free trade is beneficial if you have that worldwide. But right now, what's happening, as we can see on the world stage, Americans are being taken advantage of. Our goods have a way higher tariff, not, just worldwide speaking, than what we're imposing on people bringing goods into our own country. So what I believe Trump is doing is trying to strengthen our position worldwide and say America has to be about Americans first. But the long game of increasing manufacturing here, while that is a goal that I think we could all share, I see a very difficult road between now and getting there. So it's a dicey gamble, and I think there will be some fallout there for people, feeling this pinch and this pain. Now, we've already seen some movement with Mexico. Like I said, we're seeing movement in other countries saying, wait, what's going on here? So Trump is a disruptor, and he is absolutely out there disrupting and trying to put America first on the worldwide stage. This is one tool he's using, and it remains to be seen how well it works out.
BJ, last words?
Well, I would just say that it is a high-stakes game of poker, and unfortunately, it's the everyday American that might end up paying the price. And we are seeing action from other countries, but we're also seeing retaliatory tariffs from other countries. So it feels like it's a trade war where if somebody loses this game of chicken, it's going to be the American people and their pocketbooks.
Maine has been in the national spotlight this week and last week. You can't deny that. So I want to take things to the very top. Let's pick it up at the letter from U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi she sent to officials in Maine and 2 other states, saying they must ban transgender athletes from competing in women's sports or risk legal consequences. This comes after that testy exchange between Governor Mills and President Trump over Maine's defiance of Trump's executive order to ban trans athletes from women's sports. BJ, I want to start with you. We know how the party loyalists on both sides feel about this issue. If you're an average Mainer, do you think you're looking at this letter and saying this is an overzealous federal government getting in Maine's way? Or are you saying the governor is creating problems for our state that we don't need to be in? What do you think?
I think if you're an average Mainer, you're looking at the fact that you have a president who has told Americans that the states should decide what they do on abortion, but doesn't want states to decide how they referee, so to say, their sports back at home. And I would also add, from that exchange between the governor and President Trump, she specifically referenced following state law. Now, the state law she talks about following that she references, that law was unanimously approved by the House a couple of years ago. And in that House chamber, when it received that unanimous approval, was Representative Laurel Libby.
And you're talking, just for our viewers, about the Maine Human Rights Act, correct?
Yes.
So
I have to disagree with that, but I was there when, in serving on the Judiciary Committee, when they changed the Maine Human Rights Act to include gender identity. And we fought it vehemently at the time, saying that it would bring exactly this type of thing. The governor's completely tone deaf. Mainers do not want her fighting, using state resources to fight against our girls. And yes, there could be an economic fallout of this. Eventually, this will be brought to the courts. It'll be decided on Title IX. But Biden did the same thing. He said, oh yes, you're going to allow transgender athletes to play in the sport of their choosing. So now we have it being flipped by Trump. I think it's important that this goes to the courts. But more importantly, this right now is a ray of hope to women in Maine who have been told that, you know what, if you disagree with us, if you disagree that there should be women-only spaces, if you don't want there to be men in the prison cell with you, you don't want men to be in the homeless shelter with you, you don't want men to be in your locker room, that doesn't matter. You're a bigot, you're racist, you have to put up and shut up. And I am so glad that someone is finally standing up for Maine women and helping us fight this fight, because we have been silenced and no one has stood up enough for women, and it is time to do so.
And Lisa, right after that exchange with Trump and Mills released a statement basically saying, you know, it's about the president threatening to withhold federal funds, which, you know, they would argue is in violation of the spending clause of the Constitution, for example. Do you think that that's been an effective strategy, and this goes to both of you, to separate kind of the legal questions from the issue of trans athletes in sports? Lisa?
I would go back and say, again, the governor is tone deaf. Very similarly, the governor of New York is fighting the federal government because the federal government said you can't put a $15 congestion toll on every single person who enters New York City because it's unfair to the working class, it's unfair to poor people. And the federal government and those taxpayers have already paid for those roads. So she's using state resources to fight for her right to tax her own people for going in. This is tone deaf. Governor Mills is tone deaf. People, Mainers, do not want their girls' ability to win and to be top athletes in their sport. They don't want that taken away. So she is very quick to turn and follow anything that comes down from a Democrat president if she agrees with it. But right now, this is such a terrible example of holding on to terrible policy that has dangerous consequences for women, and she's holding on at all costs. And the cost is to girls. The cost is to Mainers.
BJ, do you think that the Mills administration has effectively separated the legal questions, whether it's what does Title IX mean or what does withholding federal funds mean, from the question of transgender athletes in women's sports?
Well, I think that the fundamental question here is whether or not the federal government can come in with a heavy hand and tell states what to do. And we've heard time and time again from this administration that the federal government shouldn't be able to tell states what to do when it comes to abortion and what women decide to do with their own bodies. And in the same vein, I don't understand why they think the federal government can pick and choose where they weigh in on issues and threaten funding in that way. This is a states' right issue, and it's bizarre to hear an administration who has said that they trumpet state rights to come in with a heavy hand and threaten pulling funding.
We got to keep it on the issue of transgender athletes in sports, but let's go to the State House. After a fierce debate on Tuesday, the Maine House of Representatives voted to censure Republican State Representative Laurel Libby over a viral social media post she made using the name and photos of a transgender high school athlete to criticize the state policy of allowing trans athletes to play in girls' sports. She refused to apologize, thereby losing her vote in the House until she changes course. BJ, I want to start with you. Talking to Republicans and Democrats in the State House, they say the same thing. Laurel Libby is a master at using media and getting her message out there. Do you think the Democratic decision to move for this censure plays into Representative Libby's hands?
Representative Libby deserves all the credit in the world in the sense that she is very good at leveraging the audience that she's created on social media to gain influence and news stories, really. And so I think, at the end of the day, we can get into the censure and if it was appropriate or not and the actions from that. But at the end of the day, she has taken this and used it to continue to push her platform. I mean, moments after being censured, she was outside of the House chamber doing a selfie Facebook Live video that received, tens of thousands of views. So there's no question that she's using this for her own advantage. Whether that's politically smart or not, we can reserve judgment on that.
Lisa, one of the things I noticed during the debate were several Republicans who voted against the censure saying this was unacceptable, posting pictures of a high schooler. Ken Fredette very powerfully talked about his experience being bullied and said, basically there's no place for this. Do you think the post itself reflects poorly on the Republican Party, or do you think it furthers the platform of the Maine Republican Party?
I don't think that this one post reflects anything on the party as a whole. This censuring is about silencing opposition. And I think the bigger story here is honestly that the Fecto has overplayed his hand. He has no authority to remove the elected voice of the people based on a Facebook post that he disapproves of. And when you look at this bigger picture, Nina Milliken put out a post that was Representative Nina Milliken that was glorifying a woman who murdered a cop, and then he was asked officially to remove her by law enforcement because she's on the Criminal Justice Committee, and all he did was have her take the post down, and he never censured her. He never did that. And then you look at this post, and many other Republican lawmakers shared the post. He didn't censure her, so censure the rest of them. Only Laurel Libby. So this is about trying to silence the voices of women because she got so much attention with this post. Absolutely, no one wants to see children in the crosshairs of any political fight. But Republicans did not put children in the crosshairs of this fight. Democrats did. The Augusta Democrats created this problem. The Maine Principals Association had a really good policy back